on, guys? I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table. We're talking all things Battletech, and this is another installment from the classic Battletech Jihad Conspiracies. And as you can see, this is a printed version of the PDF because I could not get a hard copy of this book. But just what I saw on the internet was exceedingly expensive. Once again, never mind. I'm not going to ramble. If you've seen other videos on it, you know why I don't particularly care for doing this, but this will have to do. One of those many things that I always found fascinating about the clans after their arrival is how their caste system is set up. And as you well know, if you know about the clans, is the ideal is they're looking for the ideal warrior, whatever particular subclass of warrior, doesn't matter, and they put these together. They create them in a genetic pool, put them into an iron womb, and then birth them and shove them into a group of other squalling would-be true-born babies that are from the same genetic pool or pretty close to each other and are raised in a large batch. And those batches can be upwards of 25 or so. And the ideal is that every step of the way they're going to be put into competition with each other. They're going to be tested and individually and as a group, and over time some fail. Some fail because they're physically defective, some fail because they're mentally defective, some fail because of just bad luck and or conniving by their sibkin. And those people who fail, they get relegated to one of the lower case. The majority of them either end up in the technical case or in the merchant case. A small few end up in the scientist case, and smaller amount than you would think, end up in the labor case because for obvious reasons. But still, the few do. That said, I don't know that first off, you fail to get your trial position, and you're told you're not going to be a warrior. You have failed. So we're going to turn you over to the scientist case. You're usually in your mid to late teens when this happens. And then what? You're automatically going to become a scientist? I mean, at best, the educational system for the clans is not covered very well. And so I believe it would be up to the individual case to decide and set up how that system is going to work. And that said, just because you fail as a warrior, they think you could potentially be a scientist, they're going to stick you in this case. So at this point, you're going to have to go through a whole slew of other trials and tribulations and education and win or fail, find your niche. And then what if you don't? You're relegated to a sub case of the scientist case, or they kick you to the labor case. I mean, they've never really gone into great detail on how that works. There's a couple entries in some of the early novels, the Jade Falcon's trilogy and stuff, that talks about it. Scientist Perry, for example, which is a subject material in this particular conspiracy thing, is one of these people. So that said, it's not surprising in the highly competitive, highly stratified system of the clans that you're going to get some individuals who totally chafe at this ideal. And if you're not going to be a failed trueborn warrior, then you're going to be a success at this other thing. At least that's the mindset that they try to propose. Does that mean all the scientists and all the technicians of the clans were trueborn failed warriors, failed warriors of the warrior case? Are there actual individuals within the scientist clan that are born and raised and groomed and trained from an early age to be the next layer, or the next tier, or the next generation of scientists as well? It's a caste, right? Within that case, there's a hierarchy. Does it mean just because you're in a scientist case, you're not some laboring grunt of the scientist? You're not some lab jockey for the scientist case because you were deemed unsuitable to be an actual scientist? I mean, let's look at the sciences today as we know it. The level of speciality and technical levels within the sciences across the board are vast. There are quite a few people who are not labeled a scientist or your top-notch individual in their field, but they're supported by a slew of people who are almost as educated or just as educated, but just more specialized in what they do. So how would that work in an environment? How would that have its effect? Another thing that I have to wonder is that not going to inspire individuals within these other castes to work to the best advantage of their position and their case, while using the cover, working to the glory and position for their particular clan? And I think it makes sense that there would, and there probably a lot more that goes on than what even the warrior case wants to believe in, because the hubris and hypocrisy of a lot of the warrior case, it makes them blind to the realities of how the lives of a lot of these other cases are. They do this lip service about how their job is to look after and protect these others. In reality, they look down on them as nothing but slave labor and minions, and worse, less than people. So during some situations, it comes to light that there's this organization called the Society. And this society is run by a group of high level scientists that, in reality, the members of Clan J Falcon start to uncover this conspiracy, and then to discover that this conspiracy actually spreads to all the clans. In one level or another, all the clans have some complexity. Their science case have some complexity in this, and it makes sense. One of the things about scientists and sciences in general is collaboration. The sharing of ideas and concepts is not uncommon. If you have a totally closed environment where they absolutely will not communicate with each other, it's going to hinder the development and research more than it would if you had that open collaborative mindset. So scientists from this clan and that clan may be all working together for the same, for their own clans, on similar goals, but to overcome obstacles and problems, they discover that somebody over here has figured out something, and these figured out something else, and they work together, exchange ideas, and maybe by just the act of exchanging ideas or batting things off each other from different perspectives brings new enlightenment and new possibilities for expansion. So we know from the clans, the height of the sciences are going to be genetics and eugenics programs, followed by weapon systems, combat systems, anything that helps promote the martial capabilities of the clan, and everything else is second, trinary, or non-existent. There are going to be entire areas of scientific fields that wither on the vine altogether, or are so far down the pike that majority of the mainline clan leadership and the scientific case ignore them. It's only until some crucial event. We have some kind of virus that breaks out and starts killing all the plants on one of our vital agro worlds. Now we got to have somebody who knows the agri sciences enough to be able to figure out a way to get something to stop the blight from happening. And we need some people that have some working knowledge in how that works. And a guy who's his entire life was specializing in eugenics is not going to be that person. No matter how smart Sheldon thinks he is not the top in everybody's field. It's just, and that arrogance and blindness could actually be much more devastating consequences than if he had acknowledged that he isn't, knowledgeable in that given field, and listen to people who are. So the society comes up, and basically they uncover this plot within the scientist case to exchange bloodlines between some of the houses to get desired traits and results. So there are certain elements within the wolf clan, for example, that make wolves as savvy and as creative as they are as warriors, and more importantly as leadership. And some of that is lacking in other clans. And it's just like some clans have a lot more genetically engineered towards aggressive behavior and perseverance, the ability to continue pushing and surviving and thriving from doing that against the odds. Well, sometimes the other clans, by exchanging some of these DNA stands or these genetic imprints, they can merge some desired traits from this clan into this clan and vice versa. But this goes wholly against the perfection of the warrior caste system as the system is set up. So the warrior clans of Jake Clan, the leadership of Jake Falcon discovers that some of the wolf genetics are getting into their latest batch of SIB codes, and they're horrific. They're appalled by it, and they're horrified by it, or more importantly, they're outraged by it, and they want to put a stop to it. And this leads into a bigger conspiracy. And I'm not going to go into the details of the conspiracy specifically, because that pretty much is it in a nutshell. But it just brings us some creative questions. Interesting enough, the society contains subdivisions in an archaic rank structure, warriors-based, blah, blah, blah. Playing gods, genetics disciplines contain by far the largest percentage of society members. Because of our intense focus on genetic legacies and blood houses, the evolutionist discipline borders on the spiritual. Some clans take this genetic worship too seriously, which has in turn given these scientists near carte blanche in their own projects with little warrior interference. While discovery of unreported crossbreeding and experimentation with various blood houses was shocking and dealt with quickly by my Khan, the subsequent banishment of Etienne only seems to have fueled the fires of conspiracy. I have found some evidence that illegal crossbreeding continues, often mixing blood legacies of clans and arrangements that would probably gall most warriors into apocalyptic fits. I suspect these illegal SIB codes are being raised in hidden camps, much like the ones I discovered on Ironholt. However, based on this evidence, I also strongly suspect that additional genetic testing and experimentation is occurring beyond the selective breeding by which most warriors are familiar. For years now, rumors of a new phenotype have circulated among the genetic community of which I am a member. Of course, these rumors are based on fact. The Jaguars Protomech project, which finally exposed ironically by an intersphere invasion, seemed to prove that such rumors were true, as the Jaguars had begun special phenotyping program to breed their Protomech pilots using failed or flat genetic lines, mostly from aerospace blood names. Once the project is disseminated amongst the rest of the clans, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so just a slight caveat. The protomechs are this idea of coming up with basically miniature mechs that are bigger than the elemental combat armor, but not bigger than true mechs, so they kind of come into that mid-range. They're going to be a little smaller than the Wasp, for example. They're going to run around 8 to 10 tons in tonnage. 5 to 10 tons is the common. The downside is these machines being so tiny and compact is that most pilots have to be very small in stature to fit in them, or they have to be some serious alterations done. I mean, potentially, if you were to take main pilots, so if a main battle mech pilot, a mech warrior ends up losing his legs for something like, for example, and they choose instead of having them regrown or a prosthetic replacement attached, they choose to forego that to enter into this protomech concept. So now they're smaller, they can fit into the interior space, the confined space of this protomech. There's also some estimate that the protomech was much more neural driven, which meant direct jacking or direct interface between the human mind and the protomech systems, lacking the neural helmet itself, but a physical connection, which of course has a lot of downsides because the potential for neural feedback is much greater. There's also the possibility of genetically engineering mini pilots, small little people who can sit in these machines and pilot them. And the possibilities are there. The protomech, for the most part, kind of died on the vine. Most of the clans chose not to make use of them, and the technology was too advanced and unsuitable for even the inner sphere to put into use. Although I suspect if somebody like Holstein had got his hands on some possible stuff, that he could have found some unique ways of putting the protomech stuff into viable production. But we're talking some pretty questionable moral scenarios too when it comes to that. So playing God. So my curious parts about the society and stuff is things like this. If I'm going back to my original ramble, if I'm a member of the scientist caste and I'm looking to perfect a scientist, I want just like they're looking to perfect the next generation of warriors. The warriors of today are 10 times more superior than the warriors of 100 years ago. That's the concept here. That's the ideal eugenics program of the warrior caste system for the clans. Everything else is secondary or non-existent, which, in a broad view of things, is actually a stupid idea. I mean, what I mean by that is no, it makes perfectly good sense to keep genetically and engineering and physically testing people to get the best of the best of the best, and then pushing those forward to make the next generation of the best of the best of the best, so that our warriors are superior, faster, more capable, more intelligent, etc., etc., etc. But to just stop and end there is probably questionable at best and stupid at the worst. So it makes sense to me too that within the scientist case, somebody is going to, I'm not a genius by any means. I'm not even going to put myself into that category because I'm just a moron. But I'm sure that plenty of these scientific geniuses had much more sophisticated concepts of what I just tried to put into words, what I just tried to articulate. So it makes perfectly good sense to me that if they don't, not only they're going to manipulate the warrior gene pool, but let's just purposely manipulate within that pool the genetic markings that are desirable in what makes an Einstein, for example, using Einstein as the most or the most commonly known genius of the 20th century. So if I'm going to put together a bunch of genetic makeup, and I know that the 25 odd yahoos that go into the SIB pool are only going to be one or two that maybe will make it to the warrior case, and that out of those 25, maybe one or two will actually be suitable for the scientist case, then why not purposely engineer that to happen? So we know this that scientist Perry, for example, while she has the Ward bloodline or whatever bloodline, no, that wasn't Ward, whatever bloodline she was, the Pride bloodline, she was the part of the Pride bloodline. Potentially, if she'd have managed to succeed, she would have been a superior pilot with superior intellectual capacity for Jade Falcon. But we know that she didn't. She had issues with fear. So there was some genetic flaw in her that was going to guarantee her that she was going to come close but not succeed. Yet she's intellectually superior. So what if on purpose somebody in the manipulation stage of the scientist case intentionally introduced scientific or scientist driven DNA to this blood pool to create individuals or a small pool within the pool of individuals who are going to utterly test or just marginally test out of the warrior program itself, but be superior candidates for the next generation of scientists or the next generation of merchant prince. You see what I'm getting at? So the possibility that scientists are manipulating genetics on that level to their own ends makes sense as well as within their own case. So it's implied that they actually are potentially creating their own subgene case and gene pools or blood pools. So they're even as far as having SIB companies and facilities to raise them, totally separate from the warrior case system, which of course the warriors found out about it. They're going to stomp on it with both feet for a number of damn reasons. But within the scientist case, you want the smartest, the best, the fastest, the most creative, the most genius, and you want that to continue. You just don't want to take a chance that you're going to get the next generation is going to be a bunch of subpar idiots compared to the last generation. So to make the next best generation the next generation of warriors to be the best, then you want to do that again for at least the scientist case. So I can see that that's slippery slope. That's that slope that gets them started down certain things. And it's through a lot of this, not to mention trying to create, individuals that have very specific traits that enhance them. So this leads to the creation of the eventual creation of the gene case, which I've already done a video on. And so this concept of society, and I would be suspicious if there isn't more of these. I don't know I don't want to call them a faction. Societies existing within the clans, and not just in the clans, but across the inner sphere. I can see something like this occurring from a different angle. I mean, obviously the eugenics programs outside of majority of the inner sphere, outside of the clans, have absolutely very little going on in that kind of. They're doing it the long way. They're marrying this family member to that person's family and trying to crossbreed that way, like traditional nobility does. But if you look at the backstory for the Magistrate Canopus, for example, once again, I talk about that a little bit in the in the gene case stuff. Um, it's there. The technology and knowledge was there before the clan, before the SLDF exodus, and took their copies of it with them. Most of it's lost to the inner sphere, to our knowledge, but there's still a few pockets here and there where some of it existed, and how much and how far that got. It's only in the clans that they married all the technology, the secrecy, the access to resources, and the drive for a much bigger program to cover the finer points of these much more darker programs that the elements exist. So playing God makes more than perfect sense, and probably is happening far much more than they think it's going. And it's the same thing with genetically engineering or de-engineering stuff. It makes me wonder why some clans are just grossly superior to other clans. And in part, it's because of manipulations on the inside from both politics and knowledge and or science. There's something that come up in a different. It wasn't in a video. It was a comment I made on on Red's broadcast, a podcast the other night. It got me thinking about it. That, for example, the inner sphere, or the clan's invasion of the inner sphere, was actually a bellwether or moment for the clans. It was a crucial change in the clan dynamics and clan thought process. And in this mess that come out of it, the wars of reading, for example, and I've been reading up a little bit more on them to get a better grip on what's going on, why the home clans have separated themselves from the inner sphere clans. There's a lot of people that will bring up, well, what's going on back in Homeworlds? I don't think Catalyst gives a fart what's going on back in Homeworlds right now, because in reality, nobody cares. The Homeworlds have literally, it stipulates at the War of Reaving, the Wars of Reaving, the whole point of those was that the inner sphere clans have become tainted by their contact with the inner sphere, and they are no longer pure in the eyes of Nicholas Kerensky's vision for the clans, and so the home clans forced them out and cut them off, and cut off communications on purpose. They want nothing to do with the inner sphere at all. They don't want to know about anything. If they ever even hear about the Ilkhan situation, it's going to be years and years after the fact, and a lot will have changed in the inner sphere before then. And once they do hear about it through roundabout means, they're not going to care, or they're going to even further distance themselves from Earth or from the inner sphere because of numerous reasons. But in the process of all this, one of the things that made the clan system function for as long as it did was a parity. As long as the existing 16 odd clans at the time were on par with each other, militarily speaking, size speaking, resource abilities. So when the clans get to the inner sphere, they find themselves with a wealth of resources and manpower that the home clans can never even compete with. And they have access to a whole bunch of new information and or reborn information and concept and ideas, and that are from outside the clan's bivouac. This influences the inner sphere clans to make them completely different from the home clans. There are very few inner sphere clans now that couldn't go back to the home clans and just kick their ass. That's the truth. Majority of the inner sphere clans are much more powerful. Even though locally in the inner sphere they're not much stronger than in the other inner sphere factions as individually, but individually against a home clan, they are much more in a better position, more powerful, situated, etc. Except they don't want to go back there. They have no reason or need to or desire to. And the War of Reavings pretty much put a bullet in it. So there's no point. Just like the home clans. So when we look back at what we do see in the home clans, we see one clan has become dominant over the rest. The rest basically are vassals of that one clan. And that's because that one clan acquired enough resources, enough power, enough manpower to subjugate the rest indirectly through politics or through economic pressures. This didn't occur at any point in any of the clan history up until the invasion of the inner sphere interacts and throws a major monkey wrench into the clan system and the clan's progression and evolution. I think that's a crucial thing to take into account, or at least to give some thought about just how much that invasion of the inner sphere has actually cost the clan system and the clan concept, and how much it's altered the clans and split them. The clans are no longer a collective power. They're more of an individual faction power, and they're, in a lot of ways, they're no better or different than any of the other inner sphere great houses. It is what it is. That's just my take on that. So when we look at the society and things like this and how they work, a lot of this is going on behind the scenes. A lot of it's supposed to be super secret, sacrosanct, wheels within wheels, right? So we talk about the let's see, and then various entries and stuff, trying to give you some hints on it. So look at this Game Master section. The most members of Clan Science case have superior complex that comes to their own importance as a given. They are the keepers of every clan's bloodline, the developers and engineers of new weapons and technologies. They believe that they are the most responsible for the clan's continued survival beyond even beyond even victories in battle. Some take this attitude even further, plotting for the day that they can openly take power from the warriors and rule according to Kerensky's true vision, the laws of science. The scientist cabal is made up of those with the most extreme viewpoint. In their vision, clan identity is more often ignored than emphasized. Such a society would need to operate under extreme secrecy and remain compartmentalized, with only a select few sitting on the virtual ruling council, directing the overall ebb and flow of clan research and development through secret channels. Though privately ensuring clan loyalties, the cabalists of some clans would be more representative in such a conspiracy than others, depending on how rigid, controlling, or simply demanding their warrior castes are. In clans who are more liberal interpretation of Kerensky ways, cabal members may find themselves with even more freedoms to conspire against the warrior elite. So desperate is this need for secrecy across the cabals that most members would rarely know more than a few others within the conspiracy, and even then such contacts would likely be only to those within their own discipline or area of expertise. Scientist cabal members also need to be masters of misdirection, for they enjoy a wide range of freedom to execute their own plans only so long as the warriors focus their energies elsewhere. Cabal members therefore keep contact with fellow members to a minimum, exchanging communications only in code, holding face-to-face meetings under such tight security that even inter-sphere intelligence organizations would have a hard time cracking them. Because scientists are often involved in cutting-edge technological production study, it is not unusual for cabal members to carry or use prototype weapons and equipment. True-born scientists can be the most dangerous, as their warrior training serves them well in rare conflict that arises. Depending on how well involved a cabal cell is within the society, their intelligence and their secrecy networks can rival or even exceed the power of the watch, thus keeping the scientists one step ahead of the warrior case intel arm. The secret cabal is an antithesis of clan society. If discovered, the warrior case would waste little time in eradicating such resistance. Such cons and other high-ranking warriors may be aware of extraneous scientist activity, however, and permit such activity for reasons only they can explain. Ultimately, science cabal's activity should be portrayed as mysterious and complex. At any given time, it may be unclear how far their plans have progressed and what form such plans might take in the scheme of their ultimate revolution. As the people entrusted the lifeblood of clan society, the means to open the clan scientist cabal can be devastating. So, once again, I'm just briefly, and then I'll try to bring this ramble to an end. Part of what makes society work in general is this collective collusion between different groups of people and individuals. Our society would not function well if one group doesn't function, do its part. If you want to go to you enjoy going to your local restaurant. There is a group of people that work within that restaurant: the owners, the cooks, the servers, cleaners, all those people. You take away the cooks from a restaurant and you have no restaurant. You remove the people who own and manage the restaurant, you have no restaurant. If you take away, and we're seeing some of that in our society today, if you remove all the servers and cleaners and dishwashers from the restaurant and you have nothing but cooks and owners, you have no restaurant. The restaurants are going to fail. It's not going to succeed. It's going to have some critical problems, or it's going to cease to be that sit-down restaurant you're used to. It's going to become something different. Behind those, though, that's just the group of the people that revolve around that restaurant. And to those people, that is their livelihood, their lives, and their circle. But around them, they are supported by a group of other people. Groups such as myself, who are waste management technicians, who our job is to take away the waste, the trash, the grease, the byproducts of what they produce and sell to their customers, and what their customers don't consume, and so on. There's also a different group of people who are the suppliers, the people who bring in the food, bring in the beverages, bring in the sundries and supplies that allow that restaurant to function. If you remove any one of those other groups, that restaurant's going to fail. It's not going to succeed if it can't get rid of its trash. Nobody's going to eat at a restaurant that literally stinks to high hell, has grease running all over the floors, and trash cans overflowing, so the whole parking lot full of trash. Just saying. No more than that restaurant's going to be able to be open to sell a product if they can't get a regular supply of new food and new beverages and the materials needed to produce them into something you want to eat, and put it into a container you can take home. Without that group, that restaurant's going to fail. And beyond that, each one of those groups are supported. The waste management people like that I work for example, would not be able to do our jobs if we didn't have access to the equipment we need, which is produced by yet another group of people. Would not be able to dispose of the waste products if we didn't have the landfills and the wastewater treatment plants and the groups that operate them. Just like the suppliers, if they don't have the farmers to produce the food in the first place, and the processing operations who take the food and turning into something that's more palatable or more product friendly for the customer, and then the shipping operations who ship the material between them, all of them, it becomes a very complicated set of wheels within inside of wheels. This is how this is how all of our societies functions. In a modern society today, we are far more interdependent upon other groups of people to do and function and create the things and stuff we want. The very stuff we're doing today, I could not do this video at all if somebody at Catalyst or at FanPro or somebody at Facet hadn't created something for me to work with and to enjoy and to speculate and completely BS about. Then somebody had to create the video content provider. So if it wasn't for YouTube allowing us to do the very thing I'm doing now, I wouldn't be doing this at all, and you wouldn't be viewing it. You see the big chain? And everything's interdependent. This is where the inner sphere shows, like when I did my video on whether I posted it yet or not. I've done a video on why so many mediocre mech designs. Well, geez. You disrupt any segment of that, and it causes catastrophic domino effects in ways nobody predicts, or even the people who can predict them didn't see it all, because it's just the way it goes. So the fact that the science is cased within the clans, have secret groups or secret societies with motivations and aims that are not necessarily clan driven or not necessarily sanctioned by the quote warrior caste, which is the ruling caste of the clans, is not surprising. It's expected. The sheer level of secrecy and compartmentalization that the clan system promotes breeds that sort of stuff. So this inter-clan breeding thing where they were talking about taking taking suitable blood types and intermerging them in ways to create yet another better warrior that goes against the accepted understanding of how the warrior caste understands how this is supposed to work, it's not a bad thing. It's probably a necessary thing. Consider some of the inner sphere bloodlines. The Hans Davions, the Jamie Wolfs, the Fallon Kells, his parents, the numerous brilliant people and highly capable people of the inner sphere that are freeborn. Their bloodline DNA tendencies, the things that make them who they are would be the sort of thing the scientist case would dearly love to plug into what they have to create even better, savvier, more intelligent next generation warriors. The warrior class would disintegrate in rage. They would eradicate the scientist case if they thought that the scientists in any way were including freeborn blood into their trueborn blood pool, because it is a religion to them. It just isn't how it's supposed to work. Matter of fact, sometimes the arrogance and ignorance of that mindset can be detrimental, to the point where a clan's leadership, its warrior case, can decimate a merchant case or a scientist case to the point that they will no longer function. And then the whole case stuff, the whole clan is now handicapped because they just cut off a foot or a hand, or shot themselves in the brain. And that clan potentially is not going to survive this. And they're either going to have to do some extremely radical things to fix that or replace that, or they're going to cease to exist. And there'll be mindsets within the warrior case who will be good with that. If we can't be what we're supposed to be, the way Nicholas said we were supposed to be, because this is the way we have been indoctrinated and brainwashed into thinking, we have no way. We do not want anything other way. It should be better that nobody survives. The clan should die. We see some of that element today in America, American politics, and American social situations. And the majority of the mainstream people cringe or look sideways or huff and hiff and get quiet or step out of the room because we want to pretend like it's not happening, or we want to believe it's going to get better, it's going to repair itself, it's going to get fixed somehow. But there is a radical group on several different angles that if that one group gets their total dominated control, America as we know it will no longer be America. And we're fast approaching something of that nature. And I don't think any of us have any clue of exactly how bad or good this is going to be. It is what it is. And I imagine the clan individuals, I cannot put my feet in the shoes of the clan labor caste or the clan merchant class, the clan scientist class. I simply can't get my head around, this is what makes the clan so alien to everything else that's normal for humanity's psychosomatic, bloodletting freaking mindset that creates the Battletech universe as we know it. This is what makes the clans such an ultimate bad guy too. And I love the clans, and I love reading about them, and I guarantee you that there's a lot of players and a lot of people out there will get upset because I'm saying they are the bad guys of the bad guys. But I'm telling you, the warrior class in general, even ignorantly so, are horrific people to their own people, and their own system cripples them in many forms, in many ways, and eventually it's going to self-destruct. And this potentially is one way of that happening. Anyway, this is Rick, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. And tune in again to some other ramble at some point about yet another conspiracy and the greater thing as Battletech as we know. Till next time, guys, have a great day. A wonderful weekend out here. The end of July, a couple weeks, the Iowa State Fair is cranking up and taking the wife. Till next time.